Hey ho, folks. Welcome back to Hockey Talk. We got another beautiful day out here on the patio somewhere in Grey County. I'm Andy Clark. I'll be your host today, and we have with us Ryan Drury, Paul Hillier, and Jamie Bennett. Behind the scenes there, we have Adam Olivero being our producer and flipping the switches. And yeah, we're having another Hockey Talk reunion here on a nice June afternoon. Our focus this week, we're going to do an in memoriam at the back end. And at the top end, we're going to be focusing in on the upcoming NHL 2026 draft. So let's get into it here, guys. Let's maybe hear who you think your top three picks. Who do you have there in your list?
Go ahead, Jamie.
All right, so I think mine's going to be a little bit different than some. I think as a Leaf fan myself, I'm going to say that we're going to make the obvious pick at number one, Gavin McKenna, take the kid out of Penn State. He could potentially fill the void left by Mitch Marner in Toronto. And, this was a blessing from the hockey gods for the Maple Leafs, because not only did it look like they were going to lose this pick, but they were going to give a high pick to a division rival in a trade that hasn't worked out for them in any real plausible way. So I've got Gavin McKenna going to Toronto. Second overall, and I think this is where I'm going to start having a different list than most, I have Keaton Verhoff going to the San Jose Sharks. And I know that they've been interested. They've had conversations with him. And you got a right-handed defenseman, which is a spot they need. It's really the only spot on their roster they don't have at least one blue-chip prospect. And then third, I have the Canucks taking Ivor Stenberg. I know a lot of people like Caleb Malhotra in this spot, but I think with his dad now being the coach, they're going to just avoid that sideshow altogether and take the kid out of Sweden.
Interesting take. Paul, what do you got going?
I got only one of the same there. I'm going to go with McKenna first for the Leafs, and it's simply because you could put Stenberg at first, because I think skill-wise they're very close players, but I think Gavin McKenna would be more marketable to the Leafs for other things, and he could make them more money than Ivor Stenberg would, because Toronto fans don't know really who he is for the most part, whereas Gavin McKenna, being a Canadian kid, everyone knows who he is. His name is out there, and he'll sell better in Toronto than Stenberg would.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't have a difference in skill level as to why I think one would be better than the other. But
how much does Matt Sundin being in the Leafs front office tilt them towards Stenberg?
I think there could be a little bit there, but I don't think it's going to be enough, because the Toronto market is all about making money. And Stenberg, I just don't see how they could market him the way they could McKenna.
Mm-hmm. Well, McKenna being the cousin of Connor Bedard as well, that plays a role in, as you mentioned, marketability.
Yeah. And then, so second, I've got a defenseman going to San Jose, but I've chosen Chase Reed. I think he has a better skill set on the offensive side than Verhoff does, although Verhoff would be a great defensive defenseman. I still think they're going to go the offensive style to play up with the Celebrinis of the world, and they're going to go Chase Reed. And just because Malhotra is the coach of Vancouver, I still think they're going to kick that can of worms, and I think they're going to take Caleb Malhotra with third pick.
There
Caleb
you go.
Malhotra?
Well, I don't have much. I won't waste our time much. I have the exact same top three as Paul. And just briefly, if the Leafs stay at one, and there's rumors maybe they don't, maybe they want to go defenseman. If you're talking specifically about need, they need help defensively. I do think the acquisition of Darren Radish probably pushes the likelihood of them trading down and taking a defenseman quite a bit out of the picture. I think they really believe in the Radish edition and will try and supplement this changing defensive core. They also really like the Emile Andre kid in the Philly trade. I think that they're going to go the trade route again to try and continue improving that D-core. That's why I think McKenna is their pick there, and obviously his skill speaks for itself. Again, I think that San Jose, now this is a bit of bias given that I broadcast in the OHL, but I see Chase Reed a lot. And I just think that Chase Reed, much like Paul said, has a little bit more of an offensive upside. I think the Sharks are going to want to lean into that a little bit more. And they've also done a really good job of kind of mining the OHL for talent in a guy like Sam Dickinson. I think that Dickinson would maybe even have a little bit of insight into like the type of player that Chase Reed could potentially be, coming from the same type of pipeline on a really solid Sioux Greyhounds team. I think that the way that he plays the game screams modern day defenseman. Like, he's everything that you would find in a modern. Veroff I really like. Like, I think that kid's a top 5 pick for sure. He's a little bit more of that old school meat and potatoes guy that's really going to be a pain to play against in his own zone. It's not like he doesn't have offensive upside, because he does. He's got a big shot, but he's going to be a guy that's out there playing 25 minutes, mostly focusing on protecting his zone, than he would be a guy that plays 25 minutes potentially in a Chase Reed that can really lug the puck. And then like, I understand what Jamie's saying in terms of like, oh, we shouldn't pick this kid because it'll be like a side circus with obviously Malhotra's dad being the new coach of the Vancouver Canucks. That's actually exactly why I think they will pick him. And this is not to like disparage or say that Caleb Malhotra doesn't deserve to be a top 3 pick. He's a very, very good player. Like, he, in terms of modern centerman, is everything that you want in a guy that can play in every zone and has a really high offensive ceiling. Love his shot. Actually, his shot's maybe one of the more under-talked about parts of his game. But he deserves to have this type of hype around him. But for the very reason that that they will do this is because, you know, you say, oh, they want to avoid the sideshow. The Vancouver Canucks are a sideshow. They are a modern soap opera drama, and they always will be as long as they're under the ownership of Francesco Aquilini. You talk about a guy who's a sideshow, just Google his name and see some of the wild, crazy stories that have come out of that organization over the last number of years. That's exactly why they will pick Caleb Malhotra, and to be perfectly frank, put him and his dad in a bit of a weird spot. I don't think that he's ready to play in the NHL. I think the best thing for them to do in this likely scenario is to send him to the NCAA, where he's already committed to go to school. So I agree with Paul. I think that's probably how the top 3 shakes out. And again, this is assuming that none of these teams trade their picks. This is if these teams keep their current position, which for at least one of these teams, I don't think they will. So.
And with Caleb Malhotra, I've got him ranked as the top center in this draft.
He's a really good player. So, like, people are going, oh, they shouldn't pick him 3 because he shouldn't be at 3. I disagree.
If you're picking by team needs, Vancouver needs another good, strong centerman.
God, do they ever,
and Malhotra is the best center available.
I agree.
And it sounds like he has the chops. He deserves to be there. He deserves to be in the conversation of being a top draft pick.
Yeah, this isn't a kid ranked 26 that's getting picked by dad's team.
This isn't Punch Imlach.
No.
Signing his son from Junior B London Nationals to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
That's not it at all.
That situation.
I will say, though, if they don't take Malhotra in maybe all parties' best interest, as Jamie pointed out, I do think they'll take that Bjork kid because he's right there. I flip a coin on him or Malhotra as the top center in terms of projectable talent available. The Bjork kid would be right there for me, and the Vancouver Canucks love their Swedes.
Here's what I would say with the Leafs is I think if they stay in the number 1 slot, the pressure's just there too much that McKenna they have to take. And McKenna might turn out to be wonderful. He might have tremendous upside. But I worry that with that number 1 pick comes there's a fair bit of weight around the shoulders on that. And some players sometimes struggle to come through that. And I think McKenna has every sign he's going to be a really good player. But is he going to be a great player? And the expectations, particularly in Toronto, as a number 1 pick overall,
will be off the chart.
Yeah, and then people might be just too quick to give up on him. It might impact his development. I think if they are going to try and steer away from McKenna, they actually have to trade down, and then they can focus on defense. One name I haven't really seen here is Daxon Rudolph, who I guess he's very similar to Verhoff in some ways, same size. He's from the Western Hockey League. Has good numbers as far as offense go. So I think some projections have him around 7 or 8.
I have him picked going 8th to Winnipeg.
So I think it would be too daring for the Leafs to try and leapfrog him into number 1. But if they can trade down, get something to trade down to that 5 or 6 or 7, and then take Daxon Rudolph, you get that right shot defense with a little bit of potential offense. I don't think he's ready to go immediately, but in a year or two, I think he could be a good piece that way.
To be perfectly frank, I don't think McKenna's ready to play in the NHL.
No, he's going to take a little while to percolate.
I don't think a lot of the guys that are taken are ready.
And what about even Reed or Verhoff? They're not ready either.
I'm not a scout, and these guys can go in and have fantastic camps and get their 9 games and see where you go from there. I think that there will be a handful of guys that get the 9 games.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't think that there are more than 2 or 3 players that get taken in that first round that are actually going to stick on an NHL roster for 60 plus games.
Yeah. And some of them might just stick because the team needs them. Like, for example,
which can be a dangerous thing to do.
If Stenberg happened to go to Chicago, for example, could they really afford to not have him play with Bedard on that top line?
He's one of the couple guys that I think can play now.
Yeah.
I'd say if you're looking someone who might be able to patch in, Smits on defense there.
Yep.
He's Latvian, isn't he? Where's he from?
I believe he's Latvian, yeah.
But he played men's pro in Europe last year. So he's had that seasoning at the men's professional level.
Yeah, he's German.
Okay, yeah. He was an Olsen attack import pick, I believe, last year, wasn't he? Albert Smits?
Yeah, I have him going 7th. In my rankings, he's 7th. So
going 7th, yeah. But I think he might. I'm not saying he is NHL ready, but if you had to, I think he might be one of the ones that's most ready.
Yeah, he'd be a guy that could probably creep in there for sure.
Creep in there, yeah. Alrighty, so let's take it from the lens of, we've talked a lot about the Leafs there. But what they need to do. So let's go in order by the Canadian teams through the draft and look at what their needs are and what people might take. We've already had some mention of Vancouver there. So let's to clarify, who you think Vancouver should be taking?
Well, like I said, I think Ivar Stenberg's going to be the guy that goes to Vancouver. I mean, they're in such a place now. They finished dead last in the league that they need to take the best available player. They've got a lot of holes in the roster. And it's an easy pick where I come from.
Who do you think, Paul?
I can agree with that. I mean, defense-wise is their thing. I'd like to see them improve center positioning because you need strong centers, and that team is just a gong show right now, top to bottom. So they need a complete restructure. But I'm still sticking with what I did. I think they're going to take Kellen Malhotra because he's the best center available, and it has nothing to do with Dad coaching the team.
I just wonder it really all comes down to what their believability and faith level is in Pettersson getting this turned around, because Marco Rossi's there now, a kid that's going to get a lot more opportunity to play up the lineup and potentially be the number 2 guy there. So what is their faith level on a guy who amazingly has gone from like a 110-point player to a real wild card in terms of like what you're getting from him every night? It's like shocking seeing where he's at. And I think that probably 100% of his problem is between the ears, because people have talked a lot about Pettersson over the last couple of years. Like, oh, well, he's not physical. Well, he never was.
No.
And he was getting it done. Like that guy is still in there somewhere. It's between his ears. So how much is Vancouver? I'll say this. I think they pick Malhotra, but they should take Stenberg if he's there. They should take Stenberg. I agree with that. I think they'll take Malhotra, but I agree with Jamie. They should take Stenberg, assuming he's there.
And the one thing I've been thinking about for several months now is that what if they trade Pettersson?
You're either eating salary, you're not getting.
That's a hell of a trade, man.
It would have to be, I think, but has his runway in Vancouver run out? Have the fans had enough of him and can't get behind him anymore? And
I don't know.
Does that force their hand to maybe move him and try to get some assets back?
People are assets. I like the way as it sits now. I don't think you can trade him and hope to actually get any assets. You're gonna have to take a bad contract, maybe even 2 back, depending on if you want them to retain any of that salary. That becomes a whole other bag of marbles. I don't know, man. I think with some people, probably he has run his course with them, but I think there are a lot of people out there, and I would think that they're backed into a corner management-wise that are crossing their fingers and praying that this new coaching staff and new front office regime can get through to this guy and go, look, we We need you to be the best Vancouver Canuck that you can.
And with Pettersson, it looks like maybe team dynamics weren't always putting him in the position to do his best. It seemed to be a bit of a distraction for him. So, maybe drafting a young Swedish player there kind of.
Because they have had success with young Swedish players in the past, right?
So
100%.
Maybe that makes the environment a little more friendly for Pettersson to get his game together too, having a hot shot young Swedish player there to parlay with, whatever the Swedish word for parlay is. So, but who knows? These are all little factors along the way. I don't think they're gonna, at the end of the day, they're not gonna take him just because he's Swedish, but it could be a factor, right? If they think it might.
And the Sedins are now like running the hockey ops department, right? So yeah, you never know.
All right. So next up then is Calgary. They're picking. They're picking 6th. So what are your thoughts on what Calgary is going to be doing? Because they have a lot of needs.
All over the ice.
Over the
Everywhere
ice.
except for net, it would appear.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've got them taking the righty Carson Carells out of Prince George. I think, you put him on the blue line with Zane Parekh. You've got a lefty, you've got a righty, you've got a pairing that's going to potentially be on your team for 15 plus years. So I think that's another easy pick.
Yeah, Manitoba kid.
And I'm kind of with you there, but I've got your former pick in Keaton Verhoff. Someone big and strong who can handle it with the defensive pressure, keep the pressure off Dustin Wolf, and hope to they can add something on the offensive side too to keep the puck out of their end. But Keaton Verhoff would be a great fit in Calgary right now to help them get back on track.
I agree. I think if Verhoff's there, they could take him again. A really good pairing with Zane Parekh for the next 10, 12 years, you would hope. And playing in front of Dustin Wolf, I think that would be a pretty intimidating top pair if all things work out the way that it projects to. The other thing I wonder, though, just with them, because they have so many needs, is this the team, because we've seen this kid, we talked about him bouncing around from potential top 5 to top 10 to mid-teens now. Would they be a team that maybe takes a sniff at Ethan Belchetz, a player that they really don't have, ever since Matthew Tkachuk left town? It wouldn't shock me. Do I think they should over Verhoff? Or a guy like Verhoff, I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me to see a team that is also pretty lacking in offensive punch, especially young offensive punch, and a kid that's a big horse of a guy. Like, I mean, when you watch him in the OHL, like he stands, when he's, you don't even need to see the number.
No.
You know that it's him out there, and he's still filling out. Like, he's 6'6" and
230. At 18 years old.
He's a specimen and a player with size and really good skill around the net that, if you wanted to, compare him, I hate comparing guys. I'm not a scout. Like, I hate comparing guys to former NHL players or current NHL players. But like assuming this is like an A+ development path, best case scenario, you're looking at a slightly bigger Todd Bertuzzi. And Calgary saw an awful lot of him in the early 2000s. Like, he's a kid that just has a bit of a package that not a lot of other guys in this draft class have. And would Calgary go, you know what? We also really need some help up front too. And we already have Parekh. Do we need to take this kid who's really unique? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, because I was telling you off air between tapings here that with Belchetz, I was looking at all of the rankings.
He's all over the place.
And it's all over the place.
Yeah.
There's some have him 5 or 6, ton of have them 7, 8, 9, but there's even some have them 15, 16. And I was like, what the heck for 15, 16? Like, from the little bit I've seen, I was like, power forward might take a bit longer to develop, but he has great numbers, great size. He has all the tools. So, yeah, I think you're right. That's an interesting possibility there with Calgary and Belchetz.
And
we'll see.
I have him at 12 on my list.
Okay. Yeah.
And let's not forget that Calgary has a second first-round pick in this year's draft because
That's right.
of Vegas at number 30. I've got them taking the center Ryder Cali out of North Bay at number 30.
And Cali's a good player.
Going
Speedster.
back to Cali.
That's right.
To Cali. I was going to say, if they don't take Verhoff, very similar pick. I already mentioned him before, Dax and Rudolph. Western guy, right shot defense, similar size, similar numbers. And Verhoff and Rudolph are both Alberta kids, if that makes a difference.
This is a defenseman draft, eh? Like,
Yeah.
it really is.
Yeah,
There's
This
a lot
is like,
available there. And
this
right
is
shot
a
defense too. Is about,
defenseman draft. Yeah, like, parents out there, if your kid plays D, try and make them shoot right. Like, it'll help them. Like, it's amazing to see just how many defensemen are getting talked about. Like, well, he could squeeze into the top 10. There's like 16, 17 guys all playing for a log jam of
So a lot of them
that,
are very similar, eh?
Yeah. And a lot of them have like projectable high-end skill sets in different areas of need. So it's going to be really interesting to see, you know, where the teams that are like, well, we really need a forward, maybe, like where they slide up and down in terms of taking these guys.
All right, and that brings us to Winnipeg that are picking at 8, I believe.
A team, again, that needs kind of help everywhere.
Defense, top 6 forwards, center depth. Goalie, they're probably okay, unless, you know.
We'll see.
There have been rumors.
Okay, so yeah, I've heard some
We'll
talk there
see.
too. Yeah, so who do you guys have going with Winnipeg? We'll start with you, Paul.
I have the player you were just talking about 2 seconds ago, Daxon Rudolph. He's a perfect fit on the Winnipeg Jets. Good puck mover, big guy, right shot defenseman. They're going to have to replace guys as they get older now too. And like we just said, they need help a little bit everywhere. And he would be the perfect fit there, and he'll last there for a decade. I think he's going to be, at the very worst, the second pair defenseman his whole career. Maybe top pair. Like, we just don't know how these guys are going to project. But if he projects the way it looks right now, he could be a top pair defenseman on the Jets for a good decade, maybe a decade and a half.
Your thoughts, Jamie?
I've got Tynan Lawrence going to the Winnipeg Jets. I think, they've been looking for a second-line center for a long, long time, and it's clearly not going to be Jonathan Toews. He only played 1 year there, and now he's retired. So I think that they're going to take the center, and they're going to try and fill that gap and hopefully still compete, bounce back from a down year.
Yeah, they got Colby Barlow in the wings down there. He had kind of a quiet year with the Moose, so be interesting to see how some of the development goes with some of their forwards. What's your thoughts there, Mr. Drury?
I think that and again, a team that's hard to read, where they do need some forward help. Like, they missed the hole that Nick Ehlers left. They need some help on the back end too, to kind of try and solidify what's, kind of a middle of the road defense core. I really think the Albert Smits kid could help them there. Like, a guy that could really become a bruiser back there that is able to move the puck in a good enough fashion that if you played him with somebody that has a little bit more offensive upside, you've got a really classic defensive tandem there. And I think that Winnipeg, they seem to really like guys that, are from Europe that were able to play with men. I think that that's a big thing for Chevy there. And
It's
I
a bit of
really
a safer draft path that way, right?
Yeah, and I think that they've got young forwards that are still in the way, like Danny Zhilkin, my old Guelph Storm buddy. He got into the lineup a couple times last year through injury, and I think that they still see a future for him as a top 9 forward, probably a low end second line, high end third line player. And then Colby Barlow as well, who, is a guy that they drafted with really high expectations. It's had some injury troubles, but they still really believe in that shot, and they should believe in that shot. So I think that might push them toward a defenseman. Although, as Jamie said, they could really use some help at center too to help out Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, and having sent out at the deadline last year, Logan Stanley.
Yep.
Creating a bit of room there too.
And Smits would slide right nicely into that hole left by a 6'7" defender, right?
Yeah.
So that's my thought there.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting too. Logan, I think, first several years had 1 goal every year, and then last year, forget what he ended up with, but he was approaching 10 goals all of a sudden, right? Like 1 goal, 1 goal, 1 goal, 10 goals, right? So something was starting to click for him that way. All right, after Winnipeg, we're getting down to Montreal as the next Canadian team picking. They're in the 28th slot. So what do you think Montreal's going to be doing? Do you want to kick things off, Jamie?
Yeah, I've got a guy who was just on the move in the OHL, and Ryan Rubrick. just got moved from Niagara to Guelph. You got Montreal, and they're facing a bit of an upcoming cap crunch. They might have to move on from guys like Brandon Gallagher and or Josh Anderson. So I think if you bring in a player like this, who admittedly had a down year, but I think that he can play a good, solid role on that team. And I think that he's the kind of player that, has some upside. So it's not a very super risky pick for the Montreal Canadiens.
What are you thinking, Paul?
Just because it's the Montreal Canadiens, and I know they're kind of short stacked at center, I've got Maddox Dagenet out of the queue going there. He's not a real filled out guy yet, but these guys are only 18. He's over 6 feet, less than 200 pounds at the moment, but he'll fill out a little bit more. He might be that second, third line center they're going to need for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And being French Canadian, it almost makes sense for them.
Well, that's an interesting idea there, because the Canadiens haven't really got caught up on size sometimes, right? If the player like your Caulfields and your Suzukis, if they have the game, they're not getting caught up on the.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter about size sometimes, because some of these small guys, if you can't catch them, you can't hit them.
Absolutely, you play the game from the ice up, right?
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts there, Ron?
If he's there, and I feel like he might not be, but if he is there, and again, I think that he's a guy that would fit a couple profiles from them. Depth scoring, a guy that has a high ceiling in terms of his shot and his goal scoring ability, which you get past Caulfield. And I know Suzuki had a good goal scoring year as well. I mean, he had 100+ points. But when you get past, and Demidov is a pass first guy.
Yeah.
He can score goals. There's no doubt about it, but he's a pass first guy. He's a playmaker. I think that, and this could be a potential future line mate of Demidov's. If you put him on the right side and then had Adam Novotny of the Peterborough Petes on the left side, he's 6'1", he's 205 pounds. He's got that meat on him already. Guys like in the OHL, guys bounce off this guy. Like, he manhandles people. He scored 34 goals for a pretty good Pete's team. Not a great Pete's team, but a really good one. And I think that he's got that size profile, and he's comfortable on either side. They play him on both wings. He mostly plays left, but he can play on the right side, but he's more comfortable on the left. I just think that he could be a guy, and maybe he ends up as, Oliver Kapanen's line mate. Who knows? They're really well stacked on that right side right now in Montreal. I get that there's some center question there too, but if Novotny's there, he's got a skill package that would be very, very intriguing to them, and a guy that's already got good size too.
And speaking of, Nick Suzuki, I'm going to digress for a moment there, because his younger brother, Ryan, I believe he's 26, came up with the Barrie Colts and others. He's played for the Chicago Wolves, who were in the finals with the Toronto Marlies. Congratulations on winning the Calder Cup, the American Hockey League Championship. But all of this I'm trying to say is, I believe Ryan Suzuki, it wasn't hard for me to imagine him filling in a bottom six role for quite a few NHL teams. I'm not saying he's going to be a huge impact difference maker, but he could really shore up some depth for some teams. It's kind of the pathway. You wonder if, Montreal ends up, when they get the opportunity, sign him or make a quick trade and have a two-way contract and hope that it works out, that he can fill in some spots in the bottom six. But as I said, I digress. This is we're focusing on the draft, and that's not draft talk, but just thought I'd put a shout out there for Ryan Suzuki there from the Chicago Wolves. Alrighty, so Montreal, yeah, there's some interesting ideas there. That brings us around to what the Ottawa Senators, who were actually a really solid team this past year. Like, when you watch that first round, it's easy to sort of dismiss them out of hand that they were swept in 4 games. But they actually played really well with Carolina. Yes, they got swept, but they weren't embarrassed. They weren't blown off the ice there. So they're a team that, if they can keep percolating and just make a few additions in the right spots, they could be a really strong team this year. So let's start. We'll go the reverse direction here, if that works there. Ryan, what are you thinking for Ottawa?
So Ottawa, they've got the 32nd pick, and I think that they're pretty well set up defensively. Like, they have a really good high-end, adaptable decor. And I mean, if Thomas Chabot can just stay healthy, they project out really well on the blue line, and they've still got some prospects on the way too. And I mean, Sanderson's going to become the focal point, if he's not already the focal point of that D-core. I think they go forward here, and if he's there, I really enjoyed this kid this year. Like, watching him in the OHL, you could tell that, like, he is a guy that maybe slipped through some cracks in terms of OHL teams, but the year that he had with the London Knights, I don't think that he's going to slip through, certainly at 32nd if he's there, that he's going to slip out of the first round. He'll just get taken here, and that's Jackson Cover, the London Knights. Like, just a really, really competitive, physical, speedy winger that's got a really good shot. He's got a deceptive release too. He scored a lot of goals from distance, but he's not afraid to go to the net front either. His skating is incredible. Like, he's an unbelievably good skater, like one of the better ones in the draft, in my opinion, just in terms of his acceleration to top gear. He can get moving quick. And the London Knights, like, we saw them a lot in Guelph. Like, they would run plays where a guy would get it in the defensive corner and he'd jump the zone and they would find him up the ice and he'd get breakaways because he's just so fast. The separation where he'd have breakaways that were 15, 20 feet in front of the closest guy that was back. I think that Ottawa could use some depth scoring. I think that showed up for them in the playoffs. And mind you, a lot of their leaders didn't really have a good playoff series. But going forward, I think that they're going to need somebody on the wing that's got a bit of giddy up and go in their game that they can find and chip in. I think he'd be a really nice addition to the Ottawa Senators, if he's there.
Paul, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure about Ottawa. They're one of those teams that seems to have enough sometimes, and then other days they don't. I ended up picking Brooks Rajowski out of the Oshawa Generals. He's a monster of a kid, 6'7", over 230.
He's a big boy.
He's a big guy, and Ottawa could use some of that to go with, along with some of the other skill players they have. Having this kid as a 2 or 3 center going for the future, I think is what they're going to be looking for to add at this draft.
And Jamie, what are your thoughts?
So I'm going to go in a different direction altogether. I think we've seen that Linus Ullmark hasn't been super happy in Ottawa.
Okay, yeah.
And that he's admitted to having some difficulties since he left Boston. And I think that the Senators need to find a different goalie of the future. I mean, I certainly wish the best to Linus Ullmark. I think he's a very good goaltender. But here I think the Senators take a player like Brady Noling out of the National Development Program. Probably a few years away. The Hockey News likened him to Joseph Wall. And I think, the Senators haven't really had, a goalie of consistent caliber like they did back when they had Craig Anderson since then. So I think that with this sort of gift of a pick, because they were expected to lose it only for the NHL to reinstate it, albeit at 32, I think they're going to go and take the goalie because it's basically a freebie.
Oh, it's an interesting take for sure. All right, that brings us down to the Edmonton Oilers. A lot going on there. Potentially Mike Babcock maybe going in behind the bench, who knows? But Darnell Nurse saying he would like to exit Oil Town. So amongst that mess, who do they pick?
Well, I got them taking somebody straight up to replace Darnell Nurse, and probably not ready to go next year, but within the next couple of years, and that's Maxim Sokolovsky out of London. Big kid, 6'8", and I mean, like I said, probably not ready for next season. A couple of years down the road, he could be a solid piece for Edmonton's blue line.
I like that kid. I also saw a lot of him this year, and there are people that have whispered he could be a late first-round pick. Like, that's how highly thought of he is. Now, I don't know if that'll happen, but I mean, if he's laying around there, yeah, that'd be a really nice pickup for Edmonton. Nasty edge to his game, like a nasty player, not fun to play against.
And you still crunching the numbers there, Paul?
I didn't even make a pick for Edmonton, honestly.
Because they're out of the first
52.
round. And stuff,
They pick 52nd, and
maybe that's why I just did my first round, and then
I'll tell you what I think they might do. And obviously a guy like Sokolovsky and a defensive help would be there because I think the writing's on the wall for Darnell Nurse. I think they might try and go the trade route though to try and address that. This team really needs a goaltender. And it won't be a goaltender, obviously, that can save them in the next few years. You don't want to rush a kid in there in net. But I think that there's a kid available potentially here that I think had a really underrated, like a kid that didn't get talked about a lot when people were discussing best goalies in the league this year. Obviously, because everybody's attention was on what Ben Hrebeck was doing. Ryder Fedorov in Ottawa, who just had a goaltending, maybe one of the best goaltending seasons of all time in CHL history. Forget about the OHL. I think that Gavin Betts is a kid that could still be there in the second round that had a really, again, underrated season for the Kingston Frontenacs. A Frontenacs team that had trouble keeping the puck out of their net, and this kid still finished with a .905 save percentage and a sub-3 goals against average at .281. In the OHL, where goals are at a premium, you see a lot of 8-4s in the OHL. In Kingston, I wouldn't have exactly described them as a stout defensive team, and he still put numbers up like that. I think that if he's sitting there, it'll give Edmonton pause to potentially try and develop a goaltender of the future.
Since we're talking goaltending, I'm going to digress from the draft again, but someone that's hasn't got any fanfare for the last couple of years, but at the American League has put up fantastic numbers, is Michael DiPietro in the Boston organization. And obviously you couldn't try bringing him in at the NHL level right away, but you need goaltending depth. A couple teams have even experimented with going with 3 goaltenders, but if you can get him in your organization as basically your third or ready to be your second, I think he would be really worth a look. I know he's undersized by today's goalie standards.
That's the only thing that holds the kid back. One of my favorite people I've ever covered in the OHL, and that was before I was even on a crew full time, but I was around when Windsor went on that Memorial Cup run when they got bounced in the first round and sat around for 2 months and then hosted the tournament and won. My buddy Brock Byer was his backup goaltender, former Listowel Cyclone, and Mitchell Hawk, and he had a great time marching around Windsor with the Memorial Cup, but Dippy was the starting goaltender, and his size didn't hurt him in the OHL, that's for sure. He was dominant. I think that's what leans some teams away from potentially trying to acquire him and give him a shot, because he is on the smaller side. But if you talk about all the intangibles you want in a goaltender in terms of competitiveness, compete, his angles, the way he plays goaltending, and you know what? His size maybe hurts him in terms of being a guy that can just stand up like this and block shots and let pucks hit him. In terms of the way a lot of goalies play now, where they're down low to track pucks, he has a lot less of a problem doing that in terms of looking through screens than other goalies do. And it hasn't hurt him at the AHL level either. I really like that kid, man. And he's a heart and soul kid too, one of the best, nicest kids.
And you know that the Boston Bruins would love to move on from Jonas Corposello on that contract.
Sure they would.
So if they can find somebody to take that contract, I'm sure DiPietro will be number 2 behind Swayman.
He's earned it. He really has.
He absolutely has, yeah.
And since when did 6 foot tall become short?
Okay,
because I've never even reached.
I remember seeing a quote it was Wendell Clark mentioned, because he's 5'10".
Yeah,
he's shorter than I am. But he said, I was kind of considered big when I came into the NHL. And he said, when I left, I was on the smaller, medium size.
Do you know what I think part of it is? I think part of it is the way that teams defend now, because after the lockout, the year-long one, the rules changed so much where as a defenseman, you're not allowed to punish people in front of the net in the same type of way that Scott Stevens and Darian Hatcher were, where they would just hack you to the ice. And smaller goaltenders like Grant Fuhrer had the crowd cleared for them, because you could be a little dirty and cross-check a guy in the back with a giant piece of wood and lumber 17 times till they fell down. Screens disappeared a little more.
Pretty sure Chris Pronger played with a chainsaw at times.
I think he might have, and so did both Hatchers. But I think now, with the inability to do that as much, defending in front of the net has become more of a box out in basketball, where you're just kind of wrestling position, and the screens are so much more of a prominent issue that teams started leaning and looking for 6'3" and bigger goalies when they can't see the puck come through, there's a likely chance it hits them in the shoulder and goes over the crossbar, where with a guy like Mikey, it sneaks under that bar.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that maybe has something to do with it, but you just have, look, if a kid has a high ceiling and is able to play the position well and play his angles, defend well in front of him, and he's going to do the rest. Because there's no question about his ability to stop the puck. I think actually Boston would potentially be making a big mistake if they didn't give him a promotion to be the number 2.
Yeah.
He can play 30 games in the NHL, no problem.
Someone that might be considered a little undersized too, bringing it back to the draft, and I'm thinking we'll go around and just go for certain things we're keeping an eye on each. For me, I'm really interested being, kind of a real follower of the Owen Sound attack. Pierce Buoy, I'm really interested to see what happens with him. A lot of people have him projected in that 30 area, so around a high second round pick, but he's someone who might slide or not. Fantastic skill set, great game sense. That's one thing right off the hop when he was with Owen Sound sort of jumped out at me. He was one of those guys that anticipates the game so well that the puck, they say that phrase, the puck follows them around, but they kind of know where to be, right? So on pucks, he will show a little attitude or feistiness here and there. Obviously, he's not a big guy. He's not steamrolling people, but be interesting to see where Pierce Buoy lands. What are you guys keeping an eye on as far as draft stories?
Well, I think it's going to be really a draft that's focusing on these Canadian teams, because we're seeing a real disparity. I know Ottawa would have fallen more in the middle had they not had this penalty, but you're seeing, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and Winnipeg all in the top 10, and at least 2 of those teams, being Toronto and Winnipeg, are trying to compete now. So it increases, in my mind, the possibility of a trade. And if so, like with Toronto, could Matthew Nyes be moved? I'm hearing, potentially for Chicago's 4th overall. Does that make them better? Does it make them better now or long term? There are a lot of questions around these Canadian teams and what direction they want to go, including Vancouver and Toronto, who both have new regimes now running the show.
Yeah, that's interesting to me too. And I think that if that trade was on the table for them to trade the pick and get Nyes into Chicago and riding shotgun with Bedard, and then potentially eventually have like a Nick Lardis type of guy on the right side, that's a pretty good looking first line with a lot of skill and different skill sets. You got the power guy in Nyes who's going to go and dig. You got the supremely talented sniper running the show in the middle in Bedard. And you got a guy in Nick Lardis who's just got an unbelievable release. One of the best goal scoring seasons in OHL history. One of the guys, very few guys that scored 60. Like he's a really special player that people forget about, that they stole in the second round. If you redid that draft, Nick Lardis, there's no shot Chicago gets him there. So that's an interesting one, and it would make sense for the Leafs too, because people would go, well, you get worse losing Nyes. Well, not necessarily, because, not only do you move that money out, and obviously you'd have to plug somebody else in there to fill that void. I understand
McKenna.
that. Yeah, if you take McKenna 1 and then you trade a Nyes and get a 4 and take a Reed, a Verha, those guys that we talked about earlier that at the top end of this draft, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say this, and I'm a guy that can be accused of hyperbole every now and again. Those top end guys that we're talking about, the Reeds, the Smiths, the Verhoffs, for different reasons in their skill sets, if everything works out, like, again, an A+ projection where they turn into exactly what we think they can be, those guys, I think, would have an opportunity, if Toronto was there to take them at 4, would have an opportunity to become the best defenseman that the Toronto Maple Leafs have ever had on their squad. Because the Toronto Maple Leafs, I said this on my show, they haven't had an elite, and I need to stress this word again so Leaf fans don't get mad at me. I said elite defenseman on their team since Boreas Salming, you could argue. Had some really good defensemen. Morgan Riley, really good defenseman. Brian McCabe, really good defenseman. Thomas Caberlet, really good defenseman. they've had some guys there that are good. Ally Afraidy, really good defenseman. I'm talking about like elite where you go, boy, they got to circle that guy back there and really worry about what he's doing. The Leafs have not had that.
And sadly, I have to agree with you completely.
Had a few at the tail end of their career, like your Phaneufs and guys like that. But yeah.
Well, but in Phaneuf,
he was never elite though.
He started out that way and scored 20 goals in Calgary, and that part of his game left him a little bit when he was with the Leafs. And I'm talking as a Toronto Maple Leaf. Because, Brian Leetch played there.
Yeah.
Phil Housley.
Phil Housley played. Yeah. These were guys that were past the prime of what they could supremely do in their best days. So if the Leafs were able to pull a trade off like that and get somebody in there like Verhoff or Reed or who knows
to go with McKenna,
they could potentially turn into one of, if not the best defenseman they've ever had on that team.
And it would help leapfrog them back into contention within a year or so. Like, not saying that either McKenna or Reed or Verhoff are ready to go for this season, but the next season,
some good pieces to have for 10 plus years. Like guys that you build your team around.
Yeah.
And they don't really have that, and they haven't for a long time. If ever since Borja. God rest him.
As much as I would hate to lose Nyes as a Leaf fan,
he's a good player.
He is. He's a power forward. They're hard to come by in this world, but he does have injury, concussion issues. Are they going to plague him his career?
I don't know. Yeah.
Right? Like, if you can get the 4th overall pick and maybe something else for Nyes right now,
I think that'd be pretty good.
I think that's a pretty good idea.
We'll see.
But Toronto is not known for making the smartest moves all the time, so you just don't know what to expect. And I mean, I'm looking forward to the draft just to see what the teams I'm more favorable to do.
Yeah.
And the teams that, even if I don't like them, what I think they need to do, I want to see if they do what I think they need to do.
Yeah, I think, as Jamie said, the focus on the Canadian teams that are bunched up in that top 10 is a super interesting story.
Absolutely.
Selfishly, just with the Ovechkin thing, the Caps have 2 first-round picks. And if they really strongly feel like he's not coming back, what will that do in terms of their picks? Do they package both those first rounders and go make a big splash and go get a big winger to replace him? You can't replace him, but to fill that roster spot if they're real confident that he's not coming back. And if he does come back, do they use one of them and trade the lesser one, the Anaheim pick? Like, I don't know. That's interesting too. Like, Ovi's thought process might have a real, impact on what Washington tries to do with those 2 first-round picks.
I have Washington taking Ilya Morozov at 16.
And I would like that. Morozov's a really good player. If they keep the picks, I have no problem with it. But I bet you there's some influence on how they feel about Ovi on potentially what they do with those picks.
And the reason I went with that pick, not that Morozov isn't a good player, because he really is.
Nice Russian.
Okay, and
they do a great job with Russian players.
If they can get Ovi to come back for one more year, take him with the 16th pick.
Yeah.
Have Ovi then mentor this kid for a year until Ovi retired. That's an ideal situation for the Caps.
I think so too. And you factor in Ivan Miroshnichenko as well, who really started to come into his own as a pro last year in Hershey. I think that having the big Russian bear around, again, if they feel like he's coming back, they will probably do something like that.
And
it'll
it
be
makes perfect sense.
It'll be interesting.
And see, a lot of my dealings nowadays are with fantasy hockey, and drafts really mess me up because I'm trying to draft guys in my fantasy leagues that are going to benefit me.
Yeah.
But some of the players that are at the top of the list are not fantasy relevant. Like a Keaton Verhoff may turn into a defensive specialist and maybe only get 20 points a year. So fantasy value is out the window. He's not worth having on your team.
Yeah, you have to look at guys a little bit differently in that respect.
But when you have a guy of that talent that's going to keep 50 pucks out of your net every year, he's still valuable to a team and definitely a top 10 pick in a draft.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we had a guest visitor there. That was Harvey. He just wanted everyone to know he feels the Leafs should
Harvey the Hound.
Harvey, he feels the Leafs should focus on defense too. So
there you go.
That's where he gets.
Harvey's a smart boy.
His input that way. All right. So is there any other big draft stories you guys are following, or So
I think
maybe
we covered it.
I
We
think
covered
that's
it.
pretty much it. Yeah.
Nice.
The only thing I had for draft specific was how many, if any, of the top 10 picks were going to get traded, and we're not going to know that for another.
That's
6
always
days.
a factor, yeah.
And-
who's gonna be the one to make the big splash and move down?
And that's the thing. It's going to take one team to want to either move up 2 spots or move down.
Who
a
do you think's the
couple.
most likely to do it? I think it's San Jose.
I do
I think
too.
it's San Jose,
I think
too.
San Jose
Or Chicago.
If yeah,
depending on
they'd
that.
be right there.
Chicago would have to do it in order for a player now.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
They're not draft. They're
Same
not
with San
dropping.
Jose though. San Jose would need a big defenseman.
Yes.
They would need a Bowen Byram.
Yes.
You know, that I think San Jose is potentially the most likely to move down. We'll see.
I can't see Vancouver doing it.
No, Vancouver's not doing it.
I
Their
can't-
their owner would freak out.
and I can't see either Calgary or Winnipeg doing it.
I don't think so either. Their needs are too great.
Yeah.
I don't think they're moving down.
So based on that, it would be San Jose or Chicago for me.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. There's our Hockey Talk focus on the upcoming 2026 NHL Draft. We're just going to take a moment here to rejig, and we're going to come back with a in memoriam segment because there's been a number of people pass away recently. So we'll be back in just a moment with that. All right, folks, we're back, and we're going to do a little in memoriam focus, starting off with Jamie Bennett.
Yeah, so sadly, we've lost several prominent members of the hockey community over the past several months, including Cliff Fletcher, Kyle Calder, and more. While we mourn the loss of each of these individuals, I'd like to specifically focus on the loss of longtime NHL forward and player agent Claude Lemieux. Just days before his passing, he carried the torch into the Bell Center for his former club, the Montreal Canadiens, and was greeted by the cheers of the crowd. Days later, he was gone. You never know what someone is battling, and if you're struggling, we encourage you to reach out and seek support. The suicide crisis line is 988, or reach out to your friends, family, or someone you trust. There's no shame or weakness in seeking help or support.
Yeah, well said. If I can interject quickly.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
A couple of you guys know this. You know, my dad took his own life when I was 19, and, you know, suicide, it's a really complicated thing. And I would just echo what Jamie said. Like, if you're struggling, like, please reach out and get help, because, you know, if we can lose a guy like Claude Lemieux that seemingly had the world at his feet, and he did for a long time. I mean, this is a 4-time Cup winner, beloved teammate, a hated rival, but a beloved teammate and competitor for some really prominent NHL franchises too. Like, if we can lose a guy like that, I mean, you know, this can
Especially
affect
3
anybody.
days after he was
I know, yeah.
honored at the Bell Center, like
Which is
it seemed to come out of nowhere.
It did. It really did. And I think that speaks to what Jamie said too. Like, you never know what's going on with people. And so twofold, my message, I think, would be, if you are struggling, reach out to somebody, even if it's just a friend, you need a friendly shoulder. Like, I think, you know, Paddy Pimblett, the UFC fighter, I think said it best when a friend of his died by suicide before one of his title fights. He said, I'd rather have my mate cry on my shoulder than go to his funeral. And I think that's an important message. And then two, you know, for the people that are maybe welcoming shoulders to cry on, check in on your people, you know, because again, it's like, wow, well, no one knew and you didn't see that coming. I think we can all do a little bit of a better job of just checking in on our people and making sure that they know that support is there. So, yeah.
Well said. Paul, you were going to talk a bit about Cliff Fletcher.
Yeah, Cliff Fletcher, I didn't even realize it until the other day when I was looking some of his stuff up. He was in in hockey not specifically just the NHL, but in hockey for parts of 8 decades.
Incredible stuff.
Like you start in 1956 as a scout, and he was in hockey, actively in hockey, right up until his day of death, which was what 2 weeks ago yesterday. We lost him at 90 years old. He won 2 President's trophies with Calgary back in the 80s. Won the only Stanley Cup Calgary will ever see in 89. The man did everything. He was a manager for the Leafs and the Coyotes.
Made one of the hugest hockey trades of all time.
Brought Dougie Gilmour to Toronto.
Yeah.
That's the one, right?
Absolutely.
That's the one.
A 10-player trade.
10-player deal, bring Dougie to, and that changed the history of the Leafs for a decade after that.
Yeah.
Even though there's no,
You'd argue it changed Calgary.
there's still no Stanley Cups in Toronto, but
no, but geez, did they come close?
I still remember when we got news of that trade, because this is back when we used to get our information from things called newspapers.
Yes.
But literally, I was in the back of a pickup truck, and we were driving out. This is in Kingston, going out to West Campus, where the football fields were, because we have main campus, and then the football fields were out another part of the city. So there was a whole bunch of us rookies piled in the back of a pickup truck, and someone whips out the sports section, and that was all the talk. And they got all the faces, right? The Rob Ramage and Gilmore and all those guys in that trade. And was Natras a part of that one too? Yeah. So I just remember sitting in the back of that pickup truck with a bunch of young football players all looking at this trade, and that was just burned in my memory. It was kind of a big moment.
And at the end of his tenure with Toronto, even the fans hated him. But for that first couple of years, he was God. He could do no wrong.
People loved him, yeah.
And it's amazing how fast a fan base, and it just doesn't have to be the Leafs or Calgary, any fan base will turn on a guy if something doesn't happen for a couple. And that's just the way it is in sports nowadays.
Well, he was brought back in sort of as a savior after Ferguson too.
Yeah.
Before Brian Burke came in. So.
And he was still doing advisory work in his late years too, which is incredible. He's so dedicated.
Yeah,
he
was still with Toronto.
He was doing advisory work for them, which is absolutely incredible. The guy loved hockey.
Yeah. At 90 years old, still plugging away. And I mean, obviously his death was more age-based than anything else, but I don't think they even really announced what officially he died of, but he was 90 years old.
Yeah, a full life.
Yeah, I don't think, his mourning is going to be different because he lived a full, exciting life. He did what he loved. I bet you he has no regrets.
Absolutely.
And his son's still pretty active.
Yeah, Chuck. Yeah, absolutely. Chuck. Yeah,
so
100%.
And Ryan, over to you. A few words about Kyle Calder.
Yeah, this was a kind of bit more of a shocking one and a bit more of a tragic one. I mean, Kyle Calder, who was, as competitive and feisty, and you talk about those guys we were talking about, a little while ago about being willing to stick up for teammates and get their nose dirty. Like Kyle Calder certainly fit that bill. Gone way, way too young, at just 47. Passing away on June 15th, and people will remember him best in the NHL for playing with the Blackhawks, the Flyers, the Red Wings. I remember him best as an LA King. Also spent some time with the Anaheim Ducks, but man, he was part of that. He was part of that early era of the Kings when they were picking up all those young guys and trying to really get it turned around. Like they had taken Dustin Brown, Kopitar was not very far away, and he was a guy that, again, beloved teammate. He'd do anything for his teammates, and you saw the flood of support for his family when his passing was announced, and guys just so shocked that he's gone. Again, at just 47, and it speaks to how special the hockey community can be when so many people, he's not a guy that, jumps off the page at you like a Cliff Fletcher, some superstar guy like Claude Lemieux, but you forget just how tight-knit the hockey community is when everybody had something to offer in terms of condolences and remembrances of Kyle Calder, and the hockey world's going to be poorer for not having him in it.
All right, and that brings it over to, we're going to talk about Dennis Hall, who was an interesting character in a lot of rights. Someone that for a long time, he was a specialist on the banquet circuit, and actually even did a bit of comedy work because he was kind of funny and droll. Some of his humor probably wouldn't hold up by today's standards. a lot of Andy Cap type jokes, but making light of certain things. But but Dennis Hall was a very good hockey player too. Played just shy of 1,000 games in the NHL, like 950, 960 regular season. He played more than 1,000 if you count playoffs. 650 points, more than 300 goals. That's a pretty tight career, statistics-wise. He was part of the 72 Cup there, so he was part of history as far as hockey goes that way.
Is he not the guy that that Paul Henderson yelled at to get off the ice, and Henderson jumped on to score the big goal? I swear it might have been Dennis Hall. Because Henderson's line was not on the ice. He had just come back to the bench.
He called someone off,
And he called someone off, and I could be wrong. I swear it might have been Dennis Hall that he yelled at, and Dennis thought the coach yelled, and
So he came off.
he came off, and Henderson jumped on and went in and scored the most famous goal arguably in Canadian hockey history.
And
so
oh my God,
that might have been Dennis Hall.
It might have been Dennis Hall. I'm trying to think. The other possibility was Leaf forward Ellis, Ron Ellis.
Ron Ellis.
But I might be conflating stories because I remember Ron.
I could be wrong
this.
Here. I think
I remember Ron
have
saying
been
he had the prime view, like he was right beside all of that as it unfolded.
Yeah.
So maybe he was supposed to get on the ice next or whatever, and
we'd have to look that up. It might have been
Henderson.
Hull because he thought that Harry Sinden was yelling at him to come off the ice, and it was Henderson.
And
He
it was
jumped on and
there you go.
scored the goal.
Yeah, so 5-time All-Star. Obviously, brother Bobby was a big character, big figure in hockey.
We've heard of him. Pretty good.
The Golden Jet, pretty good.
Yeah.
Son Brett. There was also a son, Bart, played
Mhm.
a few games in the CFL. Not
That's
everybody
right.
knows that, but there's a professional football player there. I believe Bobby Jr. played some major junior along the way too, but his career didn't go quite as far. But anyhow, Dennis, real character. Even in his memoir, it's titled Stories of the Third Best Hull. And it has a picture of Bobby and Brett on there. And then the subtitle is, I would have been fourth, but Maxine wasn't allowed to play.
Yeah.
His sister Maxine. So there you go. So just a nice character that way. So rest in peace to all of these people we mentioned, and there's probably some others we didn't get to. And then we also want to take a moment for give some memories or in memoriam to, as of the end of the Stanley Cup run this year, CBC will no longer be running Hockey Night in Canada. So that's over 70 years of history, big part of Canadian fabric of our culture. So rest in peace, Hockey Night in Canada. Thoughts about CBC and Hockey Night in Canada parting ways?
I don't know what to do now on Saturday nights. Like, that's been my entire life. And I mean, I guess since I'm probably the oldest one out of this group, all of us, it's our whole life watching Hockey Night in Canada. That was what we did Saturday nights our entire lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, now we can still stream it or watch it on Sportsnet or whatever, but
if it's not blacked out.
yeah, but like the CBC, if you only got 2 channels on your cable box or whatever, CBC was one of them. You could still watch Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night, and now that's just going to be gone. And for some of us that have been into hockey, this is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand now that things have to change along with the times and that, but this one is going to hit hard a little bit for some of us more than others because of this duration and how big it's been in Canada for so long. To see it go like this, it makes me sad, and I'm just going to have to watch the games on Sportsnet now, I guess, but I'm going to miss the Hockey Night in Canada aspect of watching it on CBC.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like CBC, so there's some confusion, right? Like CBC, Sportsnet is ending the partnership where CBC is still allowed to broadcast the Hockey Night in Canada, broadcast across their channels and platforms, including CBC Gem. So they're no longer allowed to broadcast that prime Saturday night game. CBC still owns the Hockey Night in Canada branding.
Yes.
So if Sportsnet wants to continue using that going forward, there's going to have to be some sort of deal struck and they're not short of change. Trust me, Rogers, they've got plenty of money. It'll be interesting to see if they do that or if they just completely change it to a different titled Sportsnet branded show. TSN obviously bought the rights to the original theme song years and years back in the mid 2000s. They still own that. So there's still maybe potentially a possibility that the branding can live on, and CBC in the last few days has stated that they're working on doing something interesting with it. So that to me would suggest that they're intent on keeping the branding and doing something different with it on CBC airwaves. I don't know what that will look like in terms of NHL content, if it'll be a highlight show, if it'll be an analysis show, I'm not sure, because they obviously don't have the right to broadcast the games in full anymore.
Maybe they'll hire all of us to do a broadcast.
Maybe, yeah.
Great.
It's interesting. It is sad though. 74 years, and it's a shame to see an institution like that go by the wayside in terms of it being, free, because like if you had internet or CBC or, back in the days where there were only a couple of local channels on, you got CBC. It was just part of, and still remains part of, your standard, digital cable, satellite, whatever package, you get the CBC for free on that. So in the very least, if you were a family or a household that couldn't maybe afford the bajillion plus dollars now that it costs to subscribe to 8 different streaming services to watch your favorite friggin' team play, you knew that on Saturday you could turn the CBC on for free and watch the best, Saturday night, matinee and late night game on offer. And, you forget too that a lot of American fans tuned in, like people in Michigan and stuff. They got CBC as part of their local cable packages, and they would get the Windsor CBC feed, and they would watch Hockey Night in Canada, which back in the day featured the Red Wings quite a bit.
Yes.
So, this stretches beyond our borders even, and it is sad to see it go. And, I'm younger than you guys, obviously, but I certainly grew up watching it and just, hearing Bob Cole and first being inspired to get into doing play-by-play. Like, it's too bad what's become of it.
I remember even in the mid-90s when we're talking over the air, so Hockey Night in Canada doing your Saturday night, but the midweek games used to be on Global.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which if you were located in just the right spot, you could pick up Global, so you could get the Tuesday night Maple Leaf games as well. So that was like full free. You were picking up quite a bit of Leaf content.
Absolutely.
From your antenna.
And I mean, it's funny when you look at it, because Hockey Night in Canada came to be because it was cheap programming. It was easy for CBC to be able to fill that time with that show. And now, I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar broadcast deal. So it's just, I don't know. I really think it's unfortunate. I think I'm echoing everybody's sentiment on that. And not only is that cost now being shared with the consumer, but where's that money going? Because hockey is part of a lot of people's identities, whether they're, new Canadians to people who, and really anybody who wants to be a fan can have hockey as a part of their identity. So I really hope that Sportsnet has a good plan for it, because it's really important to a lot of people.
Well, the plan is make as much money as possible. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of the sports. We don't have time to dig into the numerous examples that I could go into about how greedy the big business of sports has become. And it is all at the expense of people like us that started as fans. Like, I'm working in the industry now as a professional, and it's sad, like, watching what, it's turned into. It's become this subscription monster with a bunch of different companies vying for, well, we want 10 of the games here, so you got to subscribe to Fubo over here, and then you need Sportsnet Plus for these 40 games, and then these 5 games over here, you got to subscribe to this. And it, Netflix is buying football games and stuff. Like, if I told you that 20 years ago, people would laugh. Like, yeah, okay, Netflix, the DVD service, is going to stream NFL games, but that's what it is now. And
Netflix now also streams all the WWE pay-per-views.
Yeah, and boxing, UFC. Like, it's really sad what the almighty dollar has done to being a sports fan. It has never, in my opinion, been harder to be a sports fan and consume the content than it is now. And I don't mean the availability. The availability has never been better, because like, yeah, in the 50s, 1952 when Hockey Night in Canada started, that was the only game that was broadcast on television. Like we didn't have the ability or technology to broadcast games to people in like, you could watch Hockey Night in Canada in Australia up until a year ago. What I mean is the ability to be a fan in terms of the cost and what you as a consumer need to put into it, it has never been harder. Because if you like a bunch of sports, right, you like hockey, okay, well, now you need Sportsnet Plus, you need the NHL Center Ice streaming package if you like a team in the United States, and if they're playing a Canadian team, it's blacked out, so you better have Sportsnet Plus. And then say you're a Blue Jays fan, which I know you are, Paul. Well, if the Blue Jays game is blacked out for some reason, now you need MLB streaming service. Maybe you like football too. I don't know. You like football, Paul? You got now maybe your favorite team's playing the Christmas game on Netflix and you don't have Netflix, and so you got to ask your buddy to not log into their Netflix. Like, you have to subscribe. It's out of control. It's out of control, and it's really sad.
And how does the consumer find ways to push back is a big question.
Illegally use illegal streams. Yeah. The use of illegal streams is going to explode again. And, the FCC and different, corporations and the CRTC are like, we want to crack down on that. We want to crack down on it. You wouldn't have to crack down on it if it was sideways affordable to be able to watch all my sports. Yeah. And it ultimately is going to hurt the future revenue of these leagues and these broadcast giants, which will in turn continue to contract the jobs that are available in them, because more and more people are going to go, I simply cannot afford this, not watch, merch sales drop. Like, I don't think that the powers that be necessarily consider that stuff, but they don't care because they're making as much as they can right now. Yeah. And that's all that matters.
The one thing too that I'd like to add, is about the equity piece and the accessibility piece that Hockey Night in Canada had. You had it for the late game. You had it for the 7:00 game. You had it in different languages. Like, there's Hockey Night in Canada in Punjabi. I believe there was some Hockey Night in Canada in Indigenous languages. Yeah. Like, is that still going to be available now? Like, I think that's important for people who want to learn about the sport and simply if they just want to be fans,
And that's the thing. We're trying to grow the game to be for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, how are we going to do that if now
people can't afford it?
The Indigenous communities in Canada specifically can't watch the games anymore, or they can watch it, but
the game isn't growing; it's shrinking. Yeah. And I think that there are a lot of people
they're pricing a lot of people out of it in a lot of different ways.
Right?
That's what I mean.
I have a satellite dish at home. Plus, I have at least that I can think of 5 different streaming services, and I can only watch most of the Leaf games when they're on. There's still a couple I can't get because they're on like Apple TV, and that's the one I don't have.
I think that we're probably less than 20 years away from being in a situation where it's going to be hard to find kids that play hockey, because of not only the cost of consuming it and being able to watch it and be inspired. I'd love to try that sport. That looks really cool. It will also filter into maybe your family can't afford all these 80 streaming services to have you watch it, but they can't afford to outfit you to play the game.
And this is another huge conversation. Oh, yes. Access to ice.
100%.
Becoming a massive thing.
It all ties together.
And we could probably do a whole other show on the costs of putting your children into hockey.
Yeah, we can.
And everything like that, or in any sport for that matter.
Yep.
I think we scratched the surface on a ton of topics, so we're gonna have to have another reunion soon and hash out some of this stuff.
But I think basically it's we want to see the game that we love be accessible by as many people as possible.
Absolutely.
We all lose.
Exactly.
We lose here.
And we want it to be inclusive, accessible, and just good for everybody.
Absolutely. So, well said. We'll leave it there on that one. We'll leave this episode there. So thanks to Adam Oliveira, our producer. We have Ryan Drury, Paul Hillier, Jamie Bennett, myself, Andy Clark. From us to you, thank you for watching and listening, and keep talking hockey.